Welcome aboard. It's Captain G to Conflict of Arms, Vietnam, 1965. Operation Victor Charlie. We are now in January of 1970. So a few things happened before we get into our regular roles. As we go down and look at the tracker, and I alluded to it last time, the red conscription point bonus is now activated. So these tiles +1, there's another one up in Laos. Not that many more, but it is bonus income now that at the end of the turn, the Viet Cong will be collecting. The other thing is, now that we are in January of 1970, when we go to our random events, this is another major event in the game, similar to the Tet Offensive. This one is the Cambodian incursion in January of 1970. So at this point, the US, Anzac, and South Vietnam, plus the Khmer Republic, Khmer being, I think, the name for Cambodia, declare war on the Khmer Rouge, the communist guerrillas. So the U.S. ground forces, South Vietnamese ground forces, and then these guys will populate, and I'll put them on at the start of the term. So this will allow the Western powers to start interdicting the supply path, this trail here, and start occupying rather than just bombing some of these tiles. Additionally, though, as you look at what happened historically, there were a lot of protests in the U.S., and so January 1970, this season also is the Kent State shootings. At the end of the turn, the U.S. will roll a D6. 1 to 4, the U.S. morale is decreased by 1. On a 5 or a 6, the morale is decreased by 2. So the U.S. is already at morale 6, not knowing what's going to happen during the turn. That may go up, it may go down, it may do both. But then at the end, we'll roll a die and it'll go down 1 or 2 more. Guaranteed 1 more. The last thing that will happen is at the end of the turn, the U.S. player must also remove 3 U.S. ground units, not supply, from the board per turn during non-combat. These units must come from the tiles in South Vietnam, from the ports, or anywhere. They cannot come off of the deployment zones. So you've got to remove forces that are already in the field. They redeploy home, and then you still have to go through the deployment zone to send their replacements in. And that all starts this turn. Okay, so with the reduced 20 income, the U.S. is purchasing an A4 Skyhawk, another air quote jet aircraft for 9. 3 more infantry. They have to, just to stay even without battle casualties, buy 3 because they're going to lose 3. 2 more supply, so 9 and 9 is 18 and 2 is 20. They get their Anzac partners sending an APC, and this is to remind me to roll for their income decrease. South Vietnam is not spending anything on Laos. They're buying their own MBT to counter the 2 that the communists already have, not only on the map, but in South Vietnam on the map. They're buying a Ranger and an infantry and 2 supplies as well. The Viet Cong, they're buying an AA gun, a truck, 3 rat tunnels, 4 infantry, and 3 supply. Their North Vietnamese allies are removing all the damage. Oops, I guess except for the rail. I'll have to, I don't want to redo all the math. I'll leave 1 damage on the port because I forgot to remove the rail. That's a damage. So they're all but 1 damage. The port's still operational though. This is their bonus guy if they still have a path to Ratatouille, which they might not, depending if the US invades. They are getting a truck, an artillery, 1 infantry, and 3 supply. And then the People's Republic of China, they're sending to the VC 2 infantry and a supply, and to the South Vietnamese 1 supply and 1 CP for them to buy something with. Probably another supply on their next turn. All right, so those are the builds and the events. Let's take a look at the Order of Nations. Now, the NVA still have 3 tiles. They lost a lot of territory, but they still control 3 tiles in the south, so they're going to get a +3 to their combat initiative roll. The South's at 0, the US is at 4, and the VC are also at 3, but with no bonus. And no one gets the free influence, so no one's spending money for the influence. And the US is still below 8, or is it 7? One or the other. They're below it, which requires them to roll the 2 dice. And then we're going to take the lower of the 2. All right. Ooh, a 9 and a 5. So the 9 is, they have to take the lower. So that 2 for the NVA plus the 3, that becomes a 5. I'll put that on the next to their roundo is a 5. That's a big roll. Big roll for South Vietnam. You don't want to go first, though, South Vietnam. You have no one to react to. All you can do is shore up. 7 for the VC. And 5 for the US. So, interesting. All right. I know there's a lot of glare for some reason. So let's do the math. I'll come around to that side of the table. So 4 plus 5 is 9. 0 plus 9 is 9. So they're tied, which means they'll share a turn again. This is a 3, so 10. So the Viet Cong will get to go first. And 3 plus 5 is 8. So the NVA go last. Interesting. So the NVA go last. And I'm going to go ahead and put the US second, and then them just based on initiative and the fact the US can attack, and all these guys will be able to do is potentially recover any tiles that fell under VC control during the turn ahead of them. But they'll both be able to collaborate on their attacks. You could have South Vietnamese aircraft supporting US ground troops. There's all kinds of things you can do with that. So there we go. That is the setup, the start of turn for January of 1970. We're going to start with the Viet Cong, who are not up here. They're down here, to see what they have planned in the Mekong Delta. This is Captain G. Thanks for watching. Over and out.